Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I am doing my May book haul. Usually I do book hauls like every other month, but in May I ordered quite a few books because my semester ended, and as a celebration I was like, just order all the books, which was actually like half of the books that I actually wanted. I was trying to have like a little self-control, but I still ended up with like 13 books. So I thought I would just haul them now instead of waiting until after June, because then it would just be way too many books, because I'm sure I'll buy more in June. So I've been wanting to read some more like witchy magic kind of books, so I got a couple of those. The first of which is The Wicked Deep by Shea Ernshaw. This is one that came out in March, I think, and has kind of just been everywhere. Everyone's been talking about it, and it has a gorgeous cover. And I really have been wanting to read it. I was going to hold off until it came out in paperback, but then I decided that I would just cave and I would get it, especially since I think this is a standalone. I really try to wait for the paperback for series because I know I'm gonna have to buy a whole bunch of books, but for standalones I feel more okay about buying the hardcovers. Anyway, this one takes place in a town, I think in Washington State, where 3 women were drowned as witches during the witch trials. Now every year in the summer their spirits come back and they take over the bodies of young girls who live in the town, and then they use their bodies to lure boys to their deaths. And this is something that the town has kind of just accepted as like, well, this is our fate, this is our curse. But we follow a girl named Penny who lives in this town, and one summer a new boy moves into town and she doesn't want him to die, so she decides to try and save him, and that starts off their adventure. This one I have heard lots of great things about. I've heard that it's very like atmospheric and dark and creepy and just this very dark, whimsical kind of story, which is exactly what I want. And I'm really, really looking forward to this one. My next witchy book is a little bit of a different kind of witchy, and that is Circe by Madeline Miller. So Madeline Miller is known for writing Song of Achilles, which is like a Greek mythology retelling. Achilles was a character from Greek mythology. He was especially in the Iliad. Circe is a character that shows up in quite a few different myths. The one that she's most commonly known from is the Odyssey. When Odysseus is traveling home, he stops off at an island where Circe lives, and he kind of crosses paths with her. But this follows the story of Circe. She is the child of a god but does not have godly powers, but she does have witch powers. And the gods start to fear her, so they confine her to an island. But on this island, she still actually crosses paths with many other stories and characters from mythology. I don't actually know that much about this story. I just know it's witchy and it is based on Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology. I was a classical studies minor in my undergrad with a focus in mythology, so I'm really excited to read this one because it seems like it's gonna combine 2 things that I really enjoy. Also, I got the UK edition because it's so pretty. Because the US edition usually has a face on it, which is also a really cool cover, but I really, really liked this one. It has all of these little flower designs and it's like embossed, so it has texture to it, and it's just so cool. I love this. And my last witchy book is The Witches of Lichford by Paul Cornell. So this is a little novella, but I have heard good things about it. I have seen it around, but the only person I have heard talk about it really is Sam from Sam's Nonsense, and she enjoyed it, and I think I tend to have relatively similar reading taste to her. This takes place in a small village where a large supermarket chain wants to build a supermarket on this land, and disturbing this land would kind of disrupt the thin veil between our world and some other world. I don't know if it's a spirit world or a magical world. It just says a boundary between 2 worlds. But that would be bad, and there would be malevolent spirits or malevolent beings that would be able to come through if they disrupted it. And so our main character, Judith, is trying to prevent this from happening, to protect the people and protect the town. So I also got another novella, which is The Streets of Nottingham by Auckley Simwinga. I'm very sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly. And this, I think you can see, I already got fingerprints on it. It's that kind of like buttery feeling black cover, and so like it gets fingerprints so easily. This one takes place in a world that it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic world, I think, where there are two gods. There is the god king and Rain, who is like the mother of creation, and something happened years ago which destroyed the world except for this one little town that still exists with people. We follow one of the characters that lives in that town when suddenly these wraith-like characters attack the town. One of the main character's friends is injured, and that starts him off on an adventure to find Nottingham, a mythical city that is said that no one can ever reach Nottingham, but in Nottingham there is a healer who can heal anything. And so our main character goes off looking for Nottingham on this adventure to nowhere and trying to save his friend. This one was just suggested to me on Amazon, one of those like, if you bought this book, you'll probably like this one also. And I just thought it sounded really interesting, and that it has like gods in it. I like stories that have gods that are like involved in this, because I think the gods show up at some point and interact with the people in this story. I also really was sold by the cover. Like, this cover is so beautiful. I love this artwork, and that she has like these little antlers, and there's a sun over her head, and there are flowers on her. Like, this is very much my aesthetic. I just really liked this. So I'm hoping that this one will be good, because I know very little about it. My next book is another like post-apocalyptic story, but this one is more science fiction, I guess. But that is The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline. Again, I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. But this one takes place in a world that there has been kind of a disease apocalypse that happened. There's a disease that swept North America, and it stops people from dreaming. When they can't dream, it eventually drives them mad, and eventually they die. But it turns out that the indigenous people of North America are not affected by this disease, and they are still able to dream and survive. It's discovered that this has something to do with their bone marrow, and so now the indigenous people of North America are being hunted for their bone marrow by the Marrow Thieves. The story is following him and his friends as they are trying to survive and trying to elude the Marrow Thieves. And this book, I believe, is an Own Voices story, so I was really excited when I found this one. I have one more science fiction book, which is Kindred by Octavia Butler. This is another one on my Science Fiction Through the Decades challenge list. That is a challenge that I am doing this year, where I'm trying to read one book that was published in every decade from the 1950s to the 2000s that were influential to the genre of science fiction. This is the book that I picked for the 70s, I think. I've only ever read one other book by Octavia Butler, which was Wild Seed, I think, and that one I was only so-so about, but it is not one of her more popular books. So I'm really interested to read Kindred, because this is probably the most popular, or one of her two most popular books, so I'm really interested to see how that goes. This one follows a black woman in the 1970s who suddenly starts time traveling, but she only time travels randomly to antebellum Maryland, and she keeps interacting with this one white boy and white man, like, as he grows up, because she keeps just connecting with him throughout his lifetime, and she keeps saving his life, and she doesn't know who this is or why she's doing it. She eventually finds out that this boy is actually her like great something grandfather, and that she is saving his life so that she can be born. I think that the premise sounds really interesting, and I've heard that this book is incredible, so I'm really looking forward to it. Next, I bought an entire duology, which is the Monsters of Verity series by V.E. Schwab, which has This Savage Song and Our Dark Duet. I am trying to pretty much read all of V.E. Schwab's books. I have now read Vicious and her Shades of Magic trilogy, so this is next up on my list. I've heard that a lot of people really love this one. A lot of times people like this one better than the Shades of Magic series, I've heard. So I'm really looking forward to it. This is her like YA series, and I've only read her adult series so far, so I'm also interested to see how that goes. This one, I don't know that much about it. I don't feel like I really need to know that much about it, because I'm like, it's a V.E. Schwab book. Like, I just like her books. But as far as I know, this takes place in a world that when you do something bad, that badness turns into an actual physical monster. And what kind of monster and the severity of the monster, I guess, kind of depends on how bad the thing you did is. I think we follow two characters. One of them is human and one of them is a monster of some kind, but the monster doesn't want to be bad, I think. I think that it has to do with like what makes you human versus what makes you a monster, and like, do you have a choice between how monstrous you are? So I think that that sounds like a really interesting premise. I also am glad that like it's only a duology and these are much shorter than her Shades of Magic series books. So this will probably be a quick read, and because it's YA, so it'll hopefully be a little bit of like a quicker read. Then I also got Sinner by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a companion novel to her Shiver trilogy. I read her Shiver trilogy last year and it was okay. I wasn't a big fan of it. I'm not a huge like werewolves person, but this is a spin-off book that is a companion book to that series. It follows two of the side characters from that series, Cole and Isabel, who actually were some of my favorite characters in this series because I thought the main characters in the Shiver trilogy were kind of boring, but Cole and Isabel were pretty interesting, so I am looking forward to this. I'm thinking I might like it more than the rest of the series. I'm trying to read everything that Maggie Stiefvater has written, so I had to get this one. I think I only have 2 more books by her that I have to read. I need to read Sinner and I need to read the Scorpio races, so I'm pretty close to like accomplishing my goal. Then I also got Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This one, Book Depository sent me the wrong edition. They actually sent me the wrong edition for Kindred also. I wanted a different cover and they had a different cover, like a picture of it on the website, and then they sent me a different one. The cover that I have is fine. This one, I'm trying to decide what I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna keep it because I already have this one, but I also really like the cover that's like darker blue with like a big moth on it. I might get that one. I haven't decided yet. Anyways, I have this one now. So Strange the Dreamer is about Laszlo Strange, who is obsessed with this lost city called Weep. And then he suddenly gets the opportunity to travel to Weep, maybe, or to like try go searching for it with this like expedition. I'm not exactly sure. I don't actually know that much about this one. I've just heard people like raving about it and talking about how like whimsical and beautiful it is, and that sold me because I like things that are whimsical and beautiful, and it just seemed like the right kind of vibe. I've been wanting that kind of like whimsy kind of thing for summer. So I'm interested to read this one. As I said, I don't know that much about it, but I'm okay with that. I'm pretty much fine with not knowing much about this and just reading it kind of with a blank slate. Then I also picked up Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This one has been one of the most hyped books, I feel like, of the year. It came out in March and I have heard amazing things about it. It sounds so interesting. It is a West African inspired fantasy world. In this world there used to be lots of magic workers, but then the king decided, I think, to kill them all. So our main character remembers when there used to be magic, and remembers when the people who worked magic were wiped out. And now our main character, Zelly, has the chance to possibly bring magic back to the land and to her people. That's all I really know about the story. Again, this is one I don't know a ton about, but I'm kind of interested to go into it blind and just see how it goes, see what happens. I think it sounds really interesting. I've heard great things about it, and I really think that the setting sounds really cool. I like that they're becoming more books that are fantasy but are not just like medieval Europe fantasy, and so I'm really looking forward to this one. Speaking of medieval Europe fantasy, I also picked up Druids by Morgan Llewellyn. Again, hope I'm saying that correctly. So this is one that was recommended to me by Goodreads based on other things that I have read. It was one of those, like, if you like the Seven Water series by Juliet Marillier, which we all know I love, then I will probably also like this one. So I thought I would give it a try. It sounded interesting. I don't actually know that much about it. I think it's another Celtic historical fantasy. I think it follows a young boy who is trying to join the Order of the Druids. It's set during the Roman invasion of Ireland, I think that's a thing. I'm not totally sure. I don't actually know much about like the historical context of this, but I thought I'd give it a try, especially if, you know, people who like the Seven Water series like this. It has a tagline that I thought sounded cool, that it says, "Mine was the vast dark sky and the spaces between the stars that called out to me. Mine was the promise of magic." And I was like, that's a good tagline. I like that. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about this book, but I want to read it and I'm hoping it'll be good. And last up, I got a new book of poetry, which is Fire in the Earth by David Whyte. So David Whyte is a poet that I read one of his poems back in January. I was reading these collections called like 10 Poems to Change Your Life, and there was a poem called, I think it was called Self-Portrait in there, and I really liked it, so I wanted to read more of his stuff. This book has that poem Self-Portrait in it, so now I have that poem in a book, and I want to read the rest of his poetry and see if I like this. I feel like I'm gonna really like him, and if I do, then I'll be really excited, because this whole like quest to read more poetry will have, you know, had some fruit or something. I don't know. It won't be finished. I'm going to continue trying to read more poetry, but kind of the point of it was to find what kind of poetry I like, or a specific poet that I like, or something. So I'm hoping that I will like David Whyte and his poetry. He has quite a few books of poetry, so also if I like him, I can get some more stuff by him, and I'm really excited. So that is all for my May book haul. Let me know if you have read any of these books or what you thought of them. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!